Welcome to Culmination, where we're not experts, but we sure have a lot to say. In the process of becoming our best self, I have with me the multi-instrumentalist and composer, Alex Ma, to discuss the role of music in our lives. And with that said, let's get started. So, Alex, how would you define music?
So the composer Edvard Varese, there's a commonly quoted quote from him. We don't actually know if he was the first one to say it, or if it was a definition, but it is used as a definition today. Music is just organized sound, because there's so many different kinds of music, and some people say like snare drum solos aren't music, rap music is not music, but as long as you organize it in some sort of way, the sounds that you have, they're music. That's how I feel about it too.
How would you define that organization?
So if you have natural sounds, I would say the sound of a waterfall. Maybe it's relaxing and you might want to sit there all day, but it's not music. It's music to your ears maybe, but it's not something that someone organized intentionally into a specific set of sounds in order, right?
Hmm.
Whereas in like a snare drum solo or in rap music, you got all these rhythms that people decided on, beforehand or in the moment. They're organizing it intentionally and not just turning on, for example, a waterfall or something like that.
So it's just like a pattern in a sense.
Yeah, as long as someone's making it intentional. It doesn't have to be patterns, although there's a lot of cool music being written in modern era that just uses patterns over and over, and people will say that is not music, um, but it is. So basically, what I'm saying is like music can be a super broad category, and if you can try to organize it, it is music.
Right. It's interesting how there are so many different forms of music. I mean, you have the very complex jazz music that has all these instruments and often relies on improv, which is like in the moment thinking, like just without reading notes on a page. It's just a saxophone solo that the person makes up on the spot. And then, I don't know, like you said, rap music, it's more about the rhythms and probably more so the lyrics
Mhm.
versus the actual notes.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm no expert on rap music, so don't quote
Yeah,
me on that, but I'm spitballing here. But
yeah.
also you have like country music, which is more focused on uh the overall
The overall theme.
singing vibe. What was that?
The overall theme. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of music that a lot of different kind of people use. You got traditional music of tons of different cultures, and they're like entirely different from what we have in the Western world, right? We got
Mhm.
12 notes. Most places we got 12 notes. You got like C, C sharp, D, D sharp, so on.
Yeah.
For some other places, you might have like a completely different scale, or there's also microtones that are being used. So, yeah, there's a huge
And just
variety
real
of
quick,
music.
what is a microtone?
Oh yeah, yeah. A microtone is a note that is tuned in between two standard tones. For example, you got like a C half sharp, for example. That would just be halfway between C and C sharp. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, and also with the different cultures in the world, they just have different instruments to begin with. So a lot of their traditional songs often use those instruments. Like
yeah,
traditional Chinese music uses the erhu.
yeah, Yahoo. And I would also add that like all these cultures, it's super interesting, and they've built on each other's music technology. So the erhu is, you know, I actually don't know much about the erhu, but the guzheng is an instrument that is built like it evolves from a zither sort of instrument, and a zither is just like a simple stringed instrument that you pluck. Um,
Mm.
so it evolved from a zither that traversed the Silk Road, left and right, east and west, and back and forth and back and forth. So there's variants of it in Japan, in Korea, and there's like variants of it in Mongolia too. So it's pretty cool how different cultures can interact through time to influence the music that they make and the technology that they use to make it.
Yeah. Would you even go as far to say that the music itself shapes the cultures?
Um, Let me think about that one. So, does the music itself shape the cultures? I
Yeah,
will say for sure that music is a reflection and it can reflect back onto the culture. You got like protest songs and like, Imagine by John Lennon. A lot of that kind of music, a lot of that can impact the culture of a place like pretty significantly, I think.
right.
And as an add-on to that, like does it does it influence the culture or is it influenced by the culture? That is a hard thing to tell sometimes. My favorite piece, the Butterfly Lovers Concerto, it was written in like 1950s, the 1950s, um,
Uh-huh.
right before the Cultural Revolution, as it happens. But it was written for Western concert orchestra at a time when like China was coming into um, this era where of rapid industrialization and copying the Western world.
Mhm.
So I think that was cool. Was it reflection or was it something that pushed the culture forward? I don't know. It was also like censored a couple years after it got published too, because of the Cultural Revolution. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of interesting interaction between the music of a place and the culture of a place, like the overall culture of a place.
it's like, is it the chicken or the egg? Was
Yeah,
the
exactly. That's what I think about it.
Oh, right. It's like, did the culture exist and the music's a reflection of it, or did the music almost shape the culture?
Yeah, for real.
I mean, one thing that comes to mind is back in the 1800s during the Underground Railroad, songs were a way amongst the runaway slaves, or just slaves in general, um, to connect with one another. It almost brought them together, and these were like unique songs that they shared with each other. And like you said, with like songs that protest specifically, it's a reflection of their situations.
Yeah, I agree. Music has a great power to be a force for to reflect your culture and for the slaves in the 1800s. It was really important to them. Music is kind of integral to all our lives, I think. It's not something you can get away with not knowing, I think.
Right. It's like it's never the question of do you like music, but it's always what music do you like?
Yeah, exactly.
How has music impacted your life?
Um, so I am actually going to a music conservatory to study composition next year. So
Mm.
I guess you could say it's got a pretty big impact on my life. Um, I love performing. I love writing music and playing it with my friends. I do a lot of music. Um, but in terms of what has it done for my life, I think we might have to have some more specific questions because I don't know how to answer that.
Here, I'll guide you through it. First of all, I know that you play a lot of instruments, so do you wanna just briefly say what instruments you're capable of playing?
Sure. I played principal clarinet after studying it for 4 months by myself in sophomore year. I've played violin in the school orchestra for 6 or 7 years now. Um, I played piano. I started when I was 5, but then I quit when I was 10, and I learned it again when I was 12. And then I sing in the select choir. Um, I've played viola in some ensembles like the musical Pit or in C1. I played percussion. Yeah, I played marimba in the Drumline. That year we became WGI finalists, which was cool.
Right.
Yeah, remember that. What else? I don't know.
You
I
also
play
dabble
guitar.
with the drums a little bit?
Oh yeah, I did play drums for some performances. I also play rhythm guitar because I think it sounds cool.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yes. My grandpa actually, I learned this when we did the family history project, which is a project at our school where you learn about where your family came from and you learn
Mm.
about a specific ancestor you had. My mom's dad was actually he was super cool. I never met him because he died when my mom was like 20 or something, but he played a lot of instruments, loved singing. Um, Mom says I would have loved him. Um, he played both traditional instruments and like Western instruments. He played guitar. He sang. He did a lot of all this stuff. He wanted to go to music school actually. So in China, there were two parts in that era of getting into music school. He passed the music exam part, right? He was admitted to music conservatory, but then he
Mhm.
didn't pass the political part because his family had ties to like the Democratic opposition or something. So he wasn't allowed to go to music conservatory, which is which sucks, you know. But
Yeah.
I think it's cool that I'm able to do that now. And
Right.
yeah.
Do you think you almost even though you never met him, do you think there's, like, a connection there? Like,
Oh
maybe
yeah, of
he's the
course.
reason?
I think I don't. I'm pretty sure that's where I got all the musical gifts that I have, and I'm really thankful for that.
It's in your blood, man.
Yeah, it's in my blood.
So those are a lot of instruments. I think you left this out, but can't you play the flute too?
Oh yeah. I've dabbled in it just to learn how I could write for it. I'm not actually good at it, and I don't play it. Like I've never performed with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's my sister's flute, so I was there. I was like, I should learn how to make a sound on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are so different, all these instruments, like
Oh yeah.
drums, guitar, singing. What what's the similarity between them? Like, is it easy to learn more if you know some already?
Oh yeah, for sure it is. I used to be really big on learning languages too. I feel like it was a bit of the same way there. You just gotta
Hmm.
the practicing is pretty much the same. Like if you can't make a sound, you just practice it from the end of the sound or like a passage in music. Practice it from the end of the passage and then slowly make your way back to the front so that it's easier. You just it's just dedication. And then if you like if you like the sound of the instrument, you're going to want to practice more.
Yeah.
Um, the similarity among them, I think, is that they can make music. I I practiced scales a lot when I was learning clarinet and marimba, but I always tried to make it like musical. I always had a challenge in front of me, you know. Um,
Hmm.
like yeah, I would try to make it maybe like super soft or have really cool crescendos and decrescendos. That's
Yeah, different volume levels and everything.
yeah, yeah. I just tried to make sure there was always some sort of challenge and some sort of cool musical result. Like it wasn't just practicing; there was always music being made.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. The psychologist, like Michael Chick, sent me high. He's the leading expert on flow. He talks about that in his work and also in his book Flow. That's pretty well-fitting title, I think.
What
Um,
is flow?
Flow, yeah, that's the state where your abilities are just meeting the challenges. Like it's not too high. If it's too hard, it's not too hard, because if it's too hard and your abilities aren't up to par, you'll just not be able to do it and you'll be dejected and you'll be discouraged. But if it's too easy, and your skills are way above that, like if you're playing a C major scale on a piano when you've played professionally for 40 years, that's going to be super boring and you're just not going to be into it. Flow is the state where like you just have to focus and you get really cool results. Um, I'm not sure if we can put this into the video because it's a podcast, but cool chart that shows this. Like it's basically just a linear chart, you know. I
Yeah,
just
I can put it on screen if you want to send me it after.
Yeah. It's the chart that shows difficulty on one side and ability on the other side, and basically it just goes up as your ability goes up. Your The difficulty you can take on goes up, and that's where you want to be when they're evenly matched.
So
And that's
like a linear relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like what we're doing in stats.
Yeah. Oh man.
Um, so kind of back to talking about you and your musical experience.
Hmm.
What what drew you into music? Like obviously you liked the sound of music and everything, but
Yeah.
what really sucked you in? Like at
Well,
the very beginning?
yeah, I can answer that. So my parents, like, they tried to get us to listen to music a lot. We would go to concert halls. I would always fall asleep, but they were probably free concerts. But if they weren't, I'm sorry. Anyway, uh,
Mhm.
my my mom didn't play piano before, so as an adult, she got adult piano lessons at our old house. We got a spinet piano for like $500. Got it craned into our house, and then she started taking adult piano lessons. And I was there. I don't actually remember the first time I heard it, but I do remember when I heard the teacher playing one time during a lesson. I thought it was so pretty. It was so nice. I don't I don't know what to say. It just affected me. And after
Hmm.
the lesson, I asked my mom, "Hey, can I take piano lessons or something? Can I learn piano?" So my mom, and I am forever thankful for this, she actually gave up her own lessons so that she can enroll my siblings and me in piano lessons. So
Oh
that's
wow.
where it all started. Yeah. I mean, later on, um, they started making us practice, and I didn't like that, so I quit. I was the first to quit, actually, first one to start and the first one to quit because I didn't want to play piano because I didn't
Rebel
want to
without a
be paid.
cause.
What was that?
A rebel without a cause.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like
Continue, sorry.
Yeah. I feel like it's easier for people to like music if they're like not being forced to do it and if it's them making the decision to do it. That's how I felt early on and that's how I didn't feel later when I quit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
But then
like you gotta keep the love alive.
yeah, exactly. You got to feel like you can choose to not do it, you know.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's really cool that it just started with this one moment that inspired you to play piano. And
Yeah.
do you have any idea that you were like gonna completely fall in love with the music and instruments?
Oh no, I was like 5, so I have no clue what I was thinking. I I just wanted to play the piano.
Yeah. So what do you want to do exactly? Like you said you're going to conservatory and everything. Like you want to compose, right?
I want to compose. Yeah, that's right.
Do you have like a what is your like dream?
My
Your
dream.
dream goal?
I want to make music that makes people feel things, you know. I want to make music for people who are maybe they're sad, they have something to turn to. Maybe they're celebrating and they want to dance. I want to make music that makes people feel things, you know.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Is
So just like I don't know, providing joy or some sort of comfort.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to move people with my music. That's the important part of music. It's a form of communication is really what it is for me. If it
Yeah.
doesn't if it doesn't mean something to the composer, at least, if it doesn't mean something to you, it's never gonna mean something to someone else.
Hmm. What is your ideal method? Like concert halls, like orchestras, bands,
I think
SoundCloud?
yeah, I think wherever I can get my message across, like, wherever I can m have people hear it and feel something, that's a place I want to be. But
Okay.
I do think that, like, films, I mean, composers in film industries, they do not have great working conditions, so I don't know if I wanna go into that one. But I do like the idea of, like, having some visual and some music just working together, you know? That's that's cool.
Like a story almost?
Yeah, exactly, like a story.
Hmm. Um, now I'm curious to ask you, how exactly does music influence our moods and thoughts? Like, at the end of the day, it's just patterned sounds, right?
Yeah, so I think there's, like, a couple different theories, and I'm no expert on this, so you don't have to quote me on it or anything. I mean, I guess
Right. We're not experts.
yeah, we're not experts. We sure do have a lot to say. Uh, but there's, like, for example, minor key, sad, major key, happy, right? That's that's a lot of what we know in the Western world. But there are funeral marches across the world. There are some funeral marches which are written in major, and to me, like someone who's grown up here in America, they sound super happy, but they're actually very sad. So it's a cultural thing, is what I'm saying. Is one of the theories. You know, it's just we don't know that a perfect fourth is supposed to sound open, but we know that it does to us, and we don't know that do re mi fa sol is going to be like the happy scale. But because we've heard so much music, uh, and that music is paired with like a happy stimulus, it's almost classical conditioning. It it's happy.
Hmm. So it's all interpretation.
Yeah, yeah. It depends on where you come from. So back to the cultural thing. Music is definitely integral. No, culture is definitely integral to the identity of a piece of music.
Hmm. So a minor chord could be happy in a culture.
Yeah, yeah. It's all it's all completely different in different places, which is so interesting to me. But at the other end of the spectrum, there are certain intervals that people will find like objectively discordant. Maybe I'm not at a piano right now, but like a minor second, do you got like do re, or that's not the right solfege. But if you've got a do do, that's like Jaws, right? I mean, that's another
Oh yeah.
cultural reference. Or maybe like if you got a cultural references in music, like never gonna give you up. You know that one. Um, but what I'm saying is that there are certain intervals and chords that just sound discordant to most people. You got the tritone, Maria. If you played that together, it would sound bad, or not bad, but discordant. And this comes
Yeah,
down,
it's weird.
yeah, this comes down to a physics thing. If so, an octave. Say you have an A. I don't have perfect pitch, but say you have a note. Um, A is going to be 440. The tuning A is 440. This is not A, but okay. And then an octave above that, do, do. You got an octave above that, right? That's going to be 880 hertz. These are in hertz, by the way. So um, that sounds really good. It sounds good together because they're like easily divisible by each other. Just 1/2. A perfect fifth is going to be something like 2/3, I think. But a tritone is going to have some weird numbers. It might be like 15 over like 17 or something. So there are physics elements to music that make it sound differently.
Or it really is a theory. Like the reason why music theory exists is because it's mathematical.
I mean, music theory is different in different cultures as well. So in Western music theory, a lot of scales and or staves and scales and stuff. But I mean, what I was talking about was more of acoustics in physics.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
just the idea of like hertz and frequencies.
Oh yeah, yeah. That is definitely part of the curriculum in music theory.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's interesting how music really does play a role with just recognizing things. You were talking about conditioning earlier,
Yeah.
and think about like a jingle, like ba 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 ba.
Oh, I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like McDonald's, you know.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know. The reason why they have these jingles is because the way conditioning works is when you pair up a neutral stimulus. So in this case, a random how many note jingle. Yeah, and you pair it up with uh for all intents and purposes, savory food.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, if I hear that jingle, then I'll want McDonald's.
Something like
So
that.
that's the way it works. That's the way that marketing and slogans too, just because you hear these phrases rather than
Yeah.
jingles.
And if I remember correctly, you can like remember things better, even if you like don't know them that well. You just add some pitch to them, turn them into a song, and if I remember correctly, that makes you remember things better. Even.
Right, yeah. I remember I was at work last week and um I don't know the context of this, but I was like talking to my friend and I was like, "Can you name all the presidents of the United States?" And he
George
did
Washington.
pretty well up to like I think he stopped at William Howard Taft.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Dang, how did you memorize that?" He was like, I was just going off of the song that I knew." He was like,
Yeah.
"You know the song?" And I was like, "No, I don't." But huh.
Yeah. Super
Like
cool
he
how
remembered every single president up to President Taft,
that's a lot of
who's like
presidents.
I forgot what number he was, but
Let's look it up.
it's still a significant amount of presidents. Like he remembered some of the ones that people don't remember. Like I don't know. Like he, of course, he got George Washington, Thomas Jefferson,
Yeah.
uh, Abraham Lincoln, but he got like Pierce and James Polk, and
Uh, Harrison.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he was like, "Oh, I just remembered the song." Also, if you think about Schoolhouse Rock, it's like you can learn entire grammar points just based on a song.
Yeah.
Like conjunction junction, what's your function?
It would be so weird, like if we just had no music in classes, even like if we just cut music out of the curriculum, or if we cut music out of like first grade. Nobody goes through first grade without hearing music at least once in the classroom. So I think that just goes to tell how integral music is to our lives.
Right. It is weird how it's so interconnected, but I
Yeah.
guess it almost makes sense because we use our senses for everything, for survival purposes and everything, like
Uh huh.
down to our own primal states.
For
Like
sure.
like our eyes obviously because we see the world around us, our
Hmm.
smell to notice things that are foul or things that are pleasant,
Yeah.
our tastes. So like this thing tastes disgusting, it's probably not good for you.
For real.
Um, but with hearing, it's like obviously you need to hear sounds, but I mean, music really is. I don't know. It just serves a lot of functions because we talked about jingles earlier and
Uh huh.
conditioning, but also it just brings people together. You know,
It really does. That is a really cool thing I think about music.
why do you think it does?
Well,
We
I think
talked a little about it, but you know,
yeah. Well, I'm no expert, but I have a lot to say about that. I think that it, I think that it's something that brings us together because maybe everyone has this kind of shared connection to it. Like, um, I will say that different cultures probably have different rituals with music, and well, yeah, music is also part of rituals and like church services. You can't go without music in those. I think that different cultures though would connect differently with like different music, if that makes sense. Like earlier we were talking about the major scale and funeral processions.
hmm
That's kind of the thing I'm thinking about, where you have something that might mean one thing in one culture and another in another culture, so it brings them together differently.
Yeah. But those cultures, those people within the culture all connect with that interpretation of music.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. How can we use music to enrich our lives?
Yeah. So I think, well, music can enrich our lives in a couple of ways. As we said earlier, it brings us together. You can join a group maybe, and you make a lot of new friends just doing something that you enjoy.
Mhm.
As we mentioned earlier, it is also like something that can put you into a state of flow, which is just a super cool place to be at, and that makes people feel fulfilled a lot. Um,
Yeah.
it's also a great challenge, like if you need something to work on, you always got something to work on in music, and it teaches practice skills, dedication, and that is, a great part of the reason why instrumentalists or musicians, typically there's a correlation between like musicianship and I don't know if it's grade point average or something, but you know, and we can also use music in a couple other ways, like as we mentioned, studying. You can literally just put something to words, put some words to music,
Mm.
and you'll remember them a lot better. You can pass down culture with music. Nursery rhymes. Everyone knows nursery rhymes.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them have been with us for like centuries and even beyond that. That's a great
Mhm.
way to pass down your traditions and stuff.
Yeah. I think those are a lot of great points.
Yeah.
Just I like the idea that it helps like actively practicing an instrument or playing music, it teaches you discipline and just overall practice skills, because it's something you have to constantly work on.
For sure, yeah.
And if you skip a day, then you'll be lazy. You might not want to continue.
Mhm.
But if you don't continue, then your skills will flatten. They'll get worse. But if you
Yeah.
keep practicing consistently, you'll be really good.
Mhm.
And it's the same idea as working out or just any form of hygiene in general.
Yeah. I agree. It's a great model for teaching kids about that sort of thing, about being
Mhm.
self-disciplined.
Yeah, and it's nice because it's indirect, you know?
Mhm.
It's like you learn these skills by doing it, but it's not like somebody pointing out to you that, "Oh, yeah, you learned discipline."
Yeah. If you don't practice, you don't get better. So you have to
Right.
practice.
Yeah, and, in my case, music's been interesting for me because, I don't know, sometimes I think it's a very good way to express just emotion,
It really is. Yeah.
like, especially when you're stressed or even if you're happy, you know?
Uh-huh.
Just it's a form of release.
Yeah, for sure.
I almost view it in a spiritual sense as it's like transferring or translating or articulating these deep emotions or thoughts within your brain, your heart, or your soul,
Mhm.
and just
Heart and soul.
yeah, and turning it into music.
Yeah.
Like I've been working on a piano song recently. I don't really play piano, but I dabble.
Yeah. That's a good thing, you know?
Yeah, and I every once in a while, like every few months, I always go back to that thing, but
Mhm.
I just started, I started just like tapping away on it, like seeing what I could come up with. And then
Yeah.
I discovered like a chord progression that sounded nice. And then all of a sudden I just started making a song and it's weird because I didn't think I would be doing that, but every day now for like the past week, I've been adding to the song, tweaking it, turning it into what I want it to be. And then when I play it, it feels like I don't know, it just feels like I find clarity, I guess.
Yeah,
Like
I know what you mean.
it helps me organize thoughts. It helps express certain feelings that I can't do by even just talking about it to
Yeah.
somebody.
So it's like a sort of intense, profound sort of experience for you.
Yeah, it's like the way these notes combine together in this sequence, in this pattern. Noticing as it's a piano and you're pressing down on these keys, it's like the intensity in which you press down. If I'm doing it very harshly, it's like I'm angry and I'm actively like translating my anger into these keys and it's a rougher sound because of it.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is perfect, makes perfect sense to me, you know. In different kinds of music, there's always going to be different sorts of ways that they're expressing themselves.
Yeah.
And I'd like to link that even to the sort of musical contrast in style between like maybe the composers of the romantic era. They express their emotions a lot, you know. That's the point of the music for them. In the
Mhm.
classical era, they wanted it to be like refined, be classically beautiful, like have good proportions, like stuff like that. But um, in the 1940s, 50s, there were like 50s, 60s, there were a lot of, say, post-war musicians, composers. They would write music that expressed their times. You know, it was a bombed-out Europe. It was after the a devastating war, two devastating wars actually.
Mhm.
Um, they weren't very happy about that. You know, obviously,
Yeah.
some composers suffered just brutal, unimaginable things. They were in the concentration camps. They were the ones. They yeah. I'm just saying that they suffered a lot, and their music reflected that. You know, it reflected the times that they had been through. So it wasn't very some of it wasn't very comfortable. It wasn't very, you know, pleasant to listen to all the time. You'd have to get a taste for it. But you know, that's exactly what they're trying to express. They're not trying to make you comfortable because they're expressing their lived life, you know.
Right. It's like a story condensed into just an experience.
Yeah, and that's another thing about music. It doesn't just have a place in the culture it's from, it also has a place in the time it's from. It's informed by the time it's from. You know,
Yeah.
that's why we have Baroque performance majors. That's what they learned. They learned how to interpret music as it was when it was written, because there's so many unwritten things in the culture and the time that people might not have access to in this time. And then
Yeah.
right after, going back to the point about the post-war composers, right after the post-war composers, there were movements that fought back against that because that had become the dominant style at a lot of music schools and institutions. They wouldn't compose anything that was different from the post-war style.
Mm.
There would be, after that, there were minimalists. That's one of the movements that I identify a lot with. They they decided, you know what, all this complexity, all this um dissonantness, dis I don't know the
Dissonance.
dissonance. That's the word. Dissonance. That doesn't really reflect where I'm from because the time I'm from, and the place I'm from, millions of burgers sold. It's actually different than living on a bombed out continent post war. So they started writing music that was different. So music definitely expresses a lot, and you get a lot of context, or at least
Right.
it gives you a lot of context for the music.
You know what's also interesting is the fact that history and what we know of the past will, at least some aspects will be forgotten to time,
Very
because
true.
what we have left is just documentation.
Exactly.
For instance, it's like after World War II, as you've been mentioning that one quite a bit, it's
Mhm.
like we have people like Holocaust survivors or war veterans
Yeah.
or anyone else who was involved. And these people who actually had experiences there, like firsthand,
Hmm.
they were obviously good sources because they experienced it. But as they eventually passed, or as they pass now, basically, as it's been like 8 years by this point, um, you won't remember everything. You won't hear their stories anymore, and all that's left is either documentations or documentaries, readings, textbooks,
Yeah.
which is more tertiary. But I don't know, documents, photography, and films during that time. But you will never have the full truth as it once was. And I think music, the way that fits in, interestingly enough, is that music is also a form of documentation, like you've been describing.
Yeah. It's a great communicator.
Right, but even that is, but music's interesting because it's so nuanced and subtle in its themes and messages and the way it was composed.
Hmm.
Like it's so different than like a first-hand diary account because someone's diary is exactly their thoughts and everything, but a song is much more interpretive. So it's just interesting how time moves on,
Hmm.
and take like us, me and you, like
Yeah.
in the present day 2021 talking about the past, or like listening to a song from the 1940s,
Yeah.
we're going to get such a different interpretation from it than how it originally was. Maybe we'll get some of the vibes or story beats of that time.
Hmm.
But it's weird how music, in a sense, evolves while documentation keeps alive, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying. So you were talking about how the documentation survives and the music survives, but we might get it, we might not. I would add, like, we might get some things wrong even because it's from a different time or a different culture. It was a
Yeah.
different culture in the same place that we live in before.
Mhm.
Time's always changing, so music is a great messenger for that. But
Right.
it all comes down to context.
And it's weird how music constantly evolves. Like, as soon as there's a musical era, then there's like a reactionary era or a
Hmm.
counter era
Yeah.
or just an evolved version, like updated version.
Hmm.
Like, isn't rap just an updated version of 90s hip hop and everything?
Yeah. There's a lot of movements that just come out of and against each other. In
Hmm.
music history class, in this one class I took, we talked about like Apollonian versus Dionysian periods. So that's like Apollonian after Apollo, the god of like the sun and order and everything,
Yeah.
contrasted with Dionysus, like the god of wine and disorder in this context. It's disorder.
Mm.
So the Baroque era, Dionysian, because you got all these parts going against each other. There's not like a perfect designed, well proportioned order to any piece that you have. It's all about like whatever you want to put in there. Well, it's not about whatever you want to put in there, but you know what I mean, right? There's all these different parts jumbled about, and then there's no rules when, like, at least compared to the classical period, which is or Apollonian. You know, you got these well designed proportions of pieces, and you start at the tonic, go to the dominant, go back to the tonic. There's forms. That's when they started becoming really common, like a lot of forms that we use today.
Yeah.
So you just got the reaction you got action and reaction. You got Baroque, classical, romantic, and then moving on to serialist. You know, just, that's what I think is interesting.
Right. And it's weird how these eras take place. They keep changing as when you look at the times reflected, it's like think about how societies change too, like the
Mhm.
forms of government or the specific turmoils of the time, you know? Like the
Oh yeah,
1300s or 1340s specifically with the Black Death or the bubonic plague
oh yeah, for sure.
or the age of exploration in the
Or
1500s or
I know, like the Romantic era and Beethoven, the Romantic era specifically, they were influenced a lot by like the French Revolution. You know, like if this bloodbath is happening, we're not going to adhere to order and whatever. Why would we? We just need to express ourselves and stuff. Yeah, And
Mhm.
Beethoven once he changed the name of his symphony because Napoleon declared himself emperor, and he didn't like that, so he changed either the name or the dedication. I don't remember, but I thought that was pretty funny.
uh, yeah, it's
Musicians have always been active in like the broader society, I think.
yeah, it's almost like
Well, in our
when you
culture.
said French Rev, one of the things I think of is like paintings of that.
Yeah. And you also know like Hector Berlioz's Symphony Fantastique, where you got a guillotine chopping off a guy's head, and the music paints that.
Right. It's like there's actual paintings, but also music is its own form of painting.
Yeah, yeah. As long as you communicate what it is, people have no trouble, seeing what you mean.
Did you say no treble?
I did not, but that's really funny. I should have said that.
Oh, I heard that, so I thought you were
Lol.
well, on that note,
I see what you did there.
um, so I guess tying it tying everything we've talked about to one central idea, what do you think is the role of music in our lives?
I think the better question is, what is a role that music can have in our lives?
Hmm, fair enough.
Yeah. We just talked about so much. It's had so many roles and played so many parts in both our lives and the lives of our ancestors and our friends. I don't think there's one role that music plays. I think there's just so many.
Right. It's a teaching tool, it's documentation, it's interpretation,
Express.
it's a motivator, like when you put on your earbuds and you go on a jog.
Yeah, yeah, and that actually, as studies show, that reduces your sensation of pain. So it's like so many uses.
Hmm. Yeah, and, like, every time I work out or anyone else works out, it's like you're always listening to something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It expresses
Uh,
things at so many levels.
yeah, it's a cope. It's I don't know. It's kind of medicine if you think about it.
Yeah. There's a field called music therapy. People go into that to help people heal by using music. For example, if you have uh, a brain damage in a part of your brain that deals with language and you can't speak, a lot of people will still be able to use music and sing out words. So it's crazy.
Huh. I'm a little confused of how that works, but
Me as well. I think it just uses a different part of the brain, and then you can use that to gradually uh, work your speaking ability back. But I'm not a music therapist, so I'm not sure how it works.
Yeah, I've always heard of a music therapist, but I never was really sure what it was.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure either, but I think it's super cool.
Yeah, I think that is cool because in that case, it really is medicine.
Yeah, it is.
Um, I don't know. There's a lot to be said about music, but I think we covered most of it.
I think so too. Yeah, there's a lot of good things we said about music.
Yeah, I agree. Um, so I guess before we end things off here, what do you think is the big takeaway, or maybe the main lesson that you want the audience to know from this video?
I think the main lesson really is just you have to realize how big a role that music plays in our lives without us ever realizing it. Music plays just a huge role in every part of our life. That's what I think the audience should remember.
Okay. Yeah, I think that really does sum up everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having
And
me on.
what was that?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah.
It's been fun. And so Alex is gonna send me some songs he's made, so I'll see how I can incorporate it in the video
Awesome.
somehow.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And good luck to you with all your music endeavors.
You as well.
Thank you.
Let me
And
let me hear the song when
and
you're finished.
what was that?
Let me hear the piano song when you're finished.
Oh yeah, yeah. I definitely will. I'm still play testing, but
Yeah.
you know. So with that said, thanks everybody for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.